Greetings and salutations. Today, I'd like to take a moment to look at the age of Jackson. I started this lesson off with the journal for you guys. If you were president of the United States, uh, whose portrait would you hang in the Oval Office? And I'm really excited to see some of your answers. But the reason I asked that question was under the Trump administration. There we go. Um, President Donald Trump had Andrew Jackson prominently displayed in the Oval Office. We also see Andrew Jackson on a semi-regular basis since he is on our $28 bills. And so since he's had such a prominent uh, space in our daily lives, uh, especially as of late, I think it's important to know, well, what does he exactly stand for? And so to do that, we need to look at the time that he is the President of the United States. So, real quick, the vocabulary that we are going to be looking at, as well as some questions that I want you to be aware of. We have Andrew Jackson, obviously. We have the Democratic Party, and we're starting to look at a Democratic Party that we might be somewhat familiar with, at least in name. We have something called the spoils system. We're going to review the term veto that we did back when we were talking about the branches of government. We have the Whig Party. Again, review of this concept of manifest destiny. And we're going to finally wrap up with the Indian Removal Act and the Trail of Tears. And the questions that I want to be focusing on here are what changes occurred in the voting population during the 1820s? What is the spoils system? And why did Jackson think that the Native Americans should be moved west of the Mississippi River? So, when we first looked at the United States government, who was voting? Well, we've discussed it was white land-owning men. But what we start to see in the 1820s is that states start getting rid of that property issue. And so all of a sudden, you have more people able to vote, specifically less wealthy people, because if you don't, I mean, to own property, you need to have money. So we are starting to get more middle and even lower class people um, starting to vote in elections. And so what makes Andrew Jackson able to win the presidency is he characterizes himself as this common man. The idea that he wasn't terribly too educated there, and he's just like you and I. Even though at that time he was a wealthy plantation owner, but he runs for presidency in 1824. He does not win. He considers that a corrupt bargain for reasons that we're not going to dig into here. But he runs again in 1828 and wins. His inauguration, we have a picture of here. He pretty much opened the White House to everybody. That was kind of a big celebration. It is a people's house, if you will, and it really spurred on this whole idea. Yeah, I am one of you. I am here to fight for you. And so he wins support of the Democratic Party. At this time, we're looking at a group typically lower middle class, mostly farmers, um, people who are doing things with their hands, and we're very, very suspicious of those wealthier classes, those bankers, those merchants, those people who had money, even though it didn't look like they were really doing much of anything. And so we're going to take a look at some of the things that Jackson did, and I'm sure I'm glossing over quite a bit. But some of the key things that Jackson's presidency is known for. Number one, we have this idea of the spoils system. So when Jackson comes into power, before him, it was basically all these Democratic Republicans. And that was kind of the party for the last several administrations. Well, now here he's leading this newer Democratic Party. And so what he does as soon as he comes into the presidency, he gets rid of a lot of those um, appointees from previous presidents who belong to the other political party, and he replaces them with people who were loyal to him or helped him campaign, or well, he thought, or maybe his friends or whatever. And we see the introduction of what's called the spoils system, that you are benefiting those who helped you, get into office. We also see Jackson start to use the veto much more than we saw with any other president before him. And one of the big vetoes that he does, uh, again, rejecting a bill that is put forth by Congress, is with this charter of the U.S. Bank. I'm not going to get into the specifics here too much, but here's the big deal. On the last slide, we talked about Jefferson being this leader of the common man. Again, hey, I am like you poor farmers. I am going to fight for you. Well, what does a bank do? A bank gives out loans, it makes money. Maybe it's adding interest to those loans, and it might be hurting the farmers because of that. He kind of sees the bank as supporting his political rivals. And so, because of that, he vetoes the U.S. Bank's charter, and the bank ceases to exist. He has other big vetoes as well, but he's really the first president to really use the veto in a challenging way. And we do see some of his political opponents see that as, oh, we're getting away from presidency. Here he's acting like a king. And we have a political cartoon here on the side where we see Andrew Jackson stepping on the Constitution and tearing it up. He's all dressed up like a king there because he's, the Emperor King Andrew the First, born to command. Um, we also see from this the birth of an opposing political party, the Whig Party. And they really came out of the whole idea like they didn't like Andrew Jackson. Um, there's some other things that they were they were interested in. Mostly, hey, the national government should help fund projects like roads and canals, which Jackson wasn't going to approve of. But we start to see a Whig Party. Do we hear of the Whig Party anymore? No. So that kind of tells you how successful they were. We get some Whig presidents. That's about all. But by the time of the Civil War, it doesn't exist anymore. Oh yeah, and then my background. He hated the banks, and yet we put him on our money. Kind of an interesting conundrum there. Finally, the last big chunk of text I'm going to throw your way comes back to this idea of Indian removal. Now, so I want to reflect back on this idea of manifest destiny. Again, the belief that the United States was inevitably going to expand from, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, maybe take parts of Mexico, and to do that, you need to take over territory. And ever since the beginning of the American colonies, even, there was a question of, do the white settlers, do they absorb the American Indians, um, convert them to their religion, teach them, about all the things that they knew, and assimilate them, make them a part of the culture, or do we displace them? And we do see some successful areas where, like, even the Indians kind of saw the writing on the wall and just started becoming a part of the culture. We actually have instances of American Indians owning slaves, so being part of that culture in the South. Andrew Jackson was definitely of the mindset of, yeah, we're going to get rid of them. So Congress passes the Indian Removal Act of 1830. In short, the government is saying, hey, here's a bunch of money to negotiate treaties with the Indian tribes, and then we will give them a section out west. And so we see a map here on the right. The big groups that we were looking at here, we have the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, we got the Creek, the Seminole, and the Choctaw, I think I'm looking at here. And you can see when they were signing certain treaties. The Indians actually do kind of fight back here. They go to the Supreme Court, actually, to say, hey, no, this is our land. We are, we should be in charge of it. We cannot be forcibly removed. The Supreme Court actually sides with the Indian tribes and says, no, yeah, the federal government can't do it. To which apparently Andrew Jackson famously said, the Supreme Court has made its decision. Now let it enforce it. so he and his successor to the presidency, Martin Van Buren, pretty much just go ahead with the removal of the Indians. So we're looking at a 800-mile journey. It was started in late autumn. That obviously turned into winter. This is an 800-mile trek, mostly by foot, um, and was very, very wintry that year, so to speak. So there's a forced removal of over 100,000 people, of which over a quarter of them died, um, which is now known as the Trail of Tears. We're going to dig a little bit more into the details over the Trail of Tears over next week, but I do want to make you familiar with that. And here we have some of the journeys that were taken here. So where does that leave us? Why is Jackson a president that other presidents might put on a wall? Why is he a person that we have put on our money? We can look at it in a sense of he's really one of the first presidents who did try to speak for the common man. Hey, the banks are hurting you. We're going to get rid of the bank. We're going to open up the White House to you. And I know I'm glossing over probably other policies that Jackson had. Those are ones that he was really known for. He was, again, kind of seen as one of the founders of the modern Democratic Party. And so we do see before Donald Trump, Bill Clinton had a portrait of that same picture, I'm not mistaken, of Andrew Jackson in the Oval Office as well. So he has some Democratic ties there, if you will. But we do see some of the other items with him vetoing the charter of the U.S. Bank. A couple years later, there is some financial issues because of that. We do see the forced removal of the Indians in the South. And so Jackson, just like many other people in history, is complicated. And I hope as we go through this year, you are going to find that out about other American leaders and heroes as